One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.
When you've tutored under guys like Mike Alden and Dan Guerrero, I'm going to guess that the number of surprises when you become an AD are generally limited, but inevitably, I'm sure there were some when you got to Bowling Green, Kentucky. Walk me through maybe the first time it hit you right in the face that it's your call, it's nobody else's call but your call, it's falling to you, and you got to deal with it.
It was my first day on the job at Western Kentucky. Got there, a couple days before I started. I believe I started on a Wednesday, and I had the sports supervisor for the track and field program come into my office probably around 9 o'clock, so got there about 7:30, right, getting settled, getting your day organized and trying to, set the vision for the program. And he walks in and says, "Hey, I've got to give you the heads up on something. We had several track and field athletes arrested over the weekend for shoplifting. Here's where the process stands. Here's what they've admitted to. Here's where the police are analyzing it. What do we do?" And so, it hits you, okay, this is what you have to deal with. This had nothing to do with how I grew up in the business, fundraising, marketing, external relations, negotiating contracts. Okay, this is a student-athlete issue, and, you're front and center, and, the buck stops at your desk and how you deal with that. And so very quickly, I guess, at Western Kentucky in terms of walking right into it. And, I think that's the great thing about our jobs is there's no day that's the same. You're always challenged, with decision-making, and ultimately you have to do what's best for the program each time. And you've got to be consistent with the integrity piece of it, with the communication piece of it, and how you handle it. So it hits you day one. There's no days off when you're the athletic director, and sure enough, on day one, it hit me.
Yeah, that's interesting. And as we continue to talk more about the need for private dollars, the need for big fundraising across the nation because of the landscape of higher education and college athletics, was there a specific, and you're a little bit maybe alluding to an internal type issue with that specific track and field situation, but was there a discipline within college athletics that you feel like now you wish you would have spent a little more time on coming up through the ranks? And, given that you were in development, you probably also had a good grasp on the external side of the business, like many do who are kind of in that realm. Is there anything specifically, whether it's the compliance piece, the student athlete welfare piece, that you would say to those listening who are successful fundraisers, don't forget this, make sure you keep an eye on this or engage with your peers in the department on this specific topic?
I think the general way it works in college athletics is you start out as a specialist, right? You're a compliance officer, you're a development officer, you're in the business office, you're in marketing, you're in sports information, whatever it might be, you're a specialist. But as you evolve your leadership platform, you have to be more of a generalist. I have to know pretty much something about everything in our program. Because if I don't, I may miss something that may cost us, in a certain way. And so I've got to be a generalist. I can't really be a specialist anymore. And so I think growing up in athletics on the external side, early on you sort of become defensive. Hey, we're out raising money. The rest of you are spending the money. We have more equity than you, if you will. And so overcoming that mentality took me a while, because I was so competitive about, hey, we've got to drive revenue, we've got to build these relationships, these donors are important, and you sort of miss out, I think, on the student-athlete connection. I wasn't in the office, every day of the week. I didn't see the athletes except, on game day. And so I think having conversations with coaches, with administrators who work with student-athletes, learning the nuances of the student-athlete welfare piece, whether it's drug testing, whether it's student-athlete discipline, whether it's compliance, whether it's academics. I think that's something that it finally clicked for me when I got to UCLA, that I needed to learn more about these components. But I think that's the one piece, is having tough conversations along the way with coaches and administrators about the student athlete welfare piece, and understanding, how that dynamic works. And really, there's no manual to it. You've just got to be in it to, gain the experience. But if you have conversations along the way and learn from different situations, I think people will be better equipped to be in that chair.
Yeah, I want to ask you, kind of in closing here, specifically about facilities and, if you will, the quote unquote facilities arms race. And you guys, in your time in Oxford already, have done significant work to Vaught Hemingway, to the new basketball arena, other facilities as well. But it seems to me Clemson's new football, I'm going to call it a compound, but I mean, are some of the bells and whistles within this new facility footprint for Clemson that's not yet done, but it's getting closer? Is that going to ratchet things even more? I mean, maybe not specifically the slide or putt-putt or the outdoor fire pits or whatever, but surely you and your peers are looking at that going, man, look what they have to recruit to now. I mean, is that's got to be a legit thing, right?
Well, the latest craze, over the last 3 or 4 years was a barbershop, right? I think Oregon had the first barbershop. Well, guess what? We have a barbershop. Yeah. We have a barbershop in our football locker room. And so there's always things you're going to kind of, borrow or steal from other programs. But I think what Clemson is doing is probably to that next level. So I'm not sure you'll see, playgrounds, if you will, within our complexes, but I think the approach that we have to take, because all this angst around, amateurism and the value of college athletics, is, are there things that give a value-added experience where it's not just about, hey, we've got to pay salaries, to these student athletes, or we have to have a free market. And so I think in some ways, Clemson is saying, okay, we have to have a value-added experience on top of the normal lifestyle of a student athlete. Is there something that is beyond that? Is putt-putt the right answer? I'm not sure about that. Is slides the right answer? We're focused on, health and welfare after they're done playing, covering them after their collegiate experience with insurance. We're focused on, career development and setting them up for a job when they're finished their athletic career. All those things have to add value to the scholarship. So it could start off, a slide or a putt-putt arms race within athletics, but I think the main thing that I'm seeing is value-added components to the existing scholarship structure. What can we do that is within the rules to add value to the scholarship? Because, we are in a different world. We're in a different conversation. People are questioning, college athletics and how it fits into higher education. And so I think we've got to make sure we stay true to center, and that's the students, that's the athletes. And so I worry about, we might get on the fringe with some of these things, but I think the main point is it value added to their experience, and can we make them feel more comfortable being on our campus? And if that's one way to do it, it may set off another arms race, but I think the main point is student athlete welfare and their well-being, and making sure that they have a great experience, day in and day out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, a couple quick hitters. What book or books are on your desk right now?
I've got the Bob Bodine Two Chairs book that I've started. I got it back in the fall, and I just haven't had a chance to read it in depth. So I've started that one. That's the main one on the desk right now.
How about a Twitter account that you follow that may be under the radar, highly valuable for people?
Wow, that's a good question. Twitter account under the radar.
So you can't say ESPN, you can't say D1 Ticker, of course. You got to say something, maybe it's somebody local. Maybe it's somebody down in Mississippi who does good work, or social media-wise. Anybody that comes to mind?
There's a satire one that kind of pokes fun at our rival Mississippi State. It's like every M-State tweet ever, and whoever runs that obviously is an Ole Miss person, but it's pretty comical how they do it. So you got to be able to laugh every now and then.
Interesting. Average number of hours of sleep per night. Last one.
I would say about 7.
And that's what, 11 to 6, 12 to 7?
It's about 10:30 to 5:30.
And are you still getting your run?
I still get up and work out in the morning. I've been a morning workout guy ever since my days at Emporia State. So wake up about 5:30, get a workout in, have breakfast with the boys before they go off to school, and then usually in the office by 7:15, 7:30.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.